summer, so I know I'll be the one helping him install anything.
All right, it is 11:11, and we are here for a planning update with the Assistant Director. With that, we'll turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm filling in for Jake today, who is away on leave. Okay, so here's the agenda. So we're going to go through updates on some meetings this week, or the rest of the month, application reports, any updates for the department, compliance and enforcement, pending ordinance changes, and then we have a few action items that we'll get to. And then after this, we also have an executive session.
Is the executive session for the release of titles?
That's placing.
We have a couple for placing notice to titles, and then we have a couple for some pending litigation files.
Thanks.
So this month, we've already had 3 public hearings, one with the Planning Commission, one with the hearing examiner, and the continuation for the RV park down in Blanchard. Tomorrow, we have a continuation of a zone change from back in June, and I believe that's the only file that we have tomorrow, as well as a Planning Commission meeting tomorrow evening, hearing examiner Wednesday afternoon. We have next week we have 2 land use hearings with the board. We will be hearing an appeal of a conditional use permit on Monday, and Wednesday we have a fairly full schedule, and we already have some time set aside on July 31st if we don't get through all 4 of those hearing files next Wednesday.
Before you move on, I think we should have a follow-up conversation, maybe right after Jake gets back, to think about our future hearings. Looks like we're pretty consistently right now having 4 or 5 stacked up in an afternoon. And with our new process, there's no possible way we can get through. It's just not going to be feasible to go through the decision-making worksheet within that time frame to have that many files heard, in my opinion. So I think we just need to start planning ahead to figure out how to either block out more hours on those days in the future for our land use hearings, or to have scheduled 2 in a week or something, so that we just have more total hours available. Because even on a quote unquote simpler file, just to go through that process of working through the worksheet and giving the rationale, it just takes time, and I don't think we can stack this many up in an afternoon and not expect to have a problem.
I was thinking about that as well, because you look at your file and you kind of know where you're going, but the deliberation should impact that. And I was wondering if we shouldn't do a hearing with a decision separate. That way the decision is one where we're going through that worksheet specifically, but that maybe if it's a back-to-back, or a day is a decision day, and we're going through the worksheets of hearings we heard, so that the deliberation is part of that worksheet. Because I like to also double check that I'm hitting all of the things that are important statutorily, and you can't reasonably, we're really not giving decisions the same day in order to do a thorough job. So what if we just segregated the hearing from the decision? Because in court, they give 30 days before they tell you something. They don't just do that. And we're trying to do it all in one day and then wonder why stuff comes back that costs us. So what if we just said, at least give us this week we might do the hearings, but next week our decisions.
Yeah, that was something that Jake and I actually brought up when we introduced the reason statement process into it. Because I knew that, just from one file, we had that conditional use permit for the communication tower in Blanchard. The hearing itself was about 3 hours, and then the deliberation was about an hour and a half. And that's all the time that's allotted and more for a typical hearing date. So if the board is up to that, Jake and I will talk about it, and then we can work it out with everybody if the board agrees to that.
And then maybe I'd like to do a time where, since people have seen this worksheet, that we take time to look at how would we like to maybe reformat it or change things about it.
Sure.
But I think that if we did that, then, because we're never letting people speak when we're going through that worksheet, that it's one where even the applicants and the people that don't, opposing sides, just watching what we're deliberating on doesn't mean they need to necessarily come to that, since there's no communication, it's just a discussion from the board at that time.
Okay.
So if we gave more time, because I think that whether people like our decisions, the more thoughtful consideration of how we came to it helps the county out as a whole. I kind of don't even think coming back the next day is enough, because we should be thoughtfully considering what we all deliberated on, because some of us, I watched like the RV park one, and you guys would have been were on the same position on an issue, but you had different points of contention about something. And I think that can culminate to help planning have an easier time also writing what was the board's decision if we did a little bit more time. So I think a week is generous to the people applying to give the board time to actually go through that. That's what I would like to see.
So you're suggesting deliberating at the hearing first? We can have deliberation and then postpone the decision making a week later? Or are you proposing doing the deliberation during the second?
Well, on each of them, we talked about the issues back and forth in terms of the issues, not going line by line on the worksheet. What we've done is we have talked about our different positions and have our opinions being heard by all of the board members. And then, for example, with the cup, we all went back and we filled in our worksheet, and then you guys came back and had a discussion, and then you came to, we agree on these ones. That's what I'm saying that we should do. That way, our final, each one of our forms is post deliberation, so that the deliberation of the board was considered in that. And when I watched that, I was an onlooker, there was discussion of the dissenting opinion of what made something questionable, but it was then allowed the staff to incorporate that form of deliberation also into what the findings of the board were, but then they got the actual form for the board. So I think both are necessary, because if we didn't deliberate the first shot, then you're essentially saying you're going to wait 2 more weeks, because without the deliberation, then I may change a position based on something one of you say, or vice versa. That wouldn't be considered if we don't talk and then write our things. Because we may go back and say, well, I don't like what they said, so I'm going to make an argument against that. And then we argue differently the second time.
So we should deliberate on the first hearing, on the original hearing.
So that we know what
Yeah.
each other's
Yes.
positions are.
So high level, begin the deliberation process,
Yeah.
and then continue the hearing. We can go and do additional research, fill out the worksheets, come back, and then walk through them and discuss our differing opinions if we have differing opinions on each item of the worksheet. I think that was a good approach, and I agree with if we can do the week in between. Because when I initially said, even if it was 1 day and then a day or 2 later, I had forgotten how many hours it took to go through building that worksheet in draft form to bring for the deliberation discussion.
Just remember when we do this, I'm a big fan of this, because this is gonna, anything that results in the most defensible product, you guys know that that's my primary goal. When you say, then just so I can tell everybody that we all understand this concept, just make sure you keep when you're working on the sheet itself, keep your research confined to the record.
And not discussing it with
And
people
right, yeah, obviously,
is a
no,
big
yeah,
deal.
just keep
Right.
it all to yourself and to confine to the record that was produced at the hearing. And so you never have an allegation of, any kind of discussion that didn't take place on the record, or evidence that wasn't before you when the hearing was continued at the first.
I think that a little bit dovetails into my comment about kind of reviewing that form, because I do think there's opportunity for us to improve on that form by saying, what, as evidenced by the record and as the board on that form, pinpointing where we're pulling some of that justification from into that form? Because in part, what we're trying to do is hand over a document to planning and legal that creates a defensible record for the decision that was made. And so those decisions, just like as we're looking at based on what is the ordinance or the statute that we're using that requires to make that decision, what was the objective information that we pulled from the record that supported, the position that we put forward, I think would be helpful in some of those boxes to help people not have that as an issue, since we would be going away from the argument. And it is inevitable. I'm sure, like, you guys see people in the store and they're like, what are you going to say on the RV park? When you have that gap of time in between, there's that concern that people are doing extra stuff about a topic versus a judge being able to say, no, this person dissented and this is where they pulled it from out of the record when they created that box, and I can find it in the record so I can support it.
Not
I'm
only
wondering.
that, but just the fact that we've been, at each time we've done this, and I've kind of let you guys know it, you guys have acknowledged the standard. People can make accusations however they wish, but as long as we have a good track record to show that we understand the standard and we're following it, that's great too.
Well, and I'm just saying, if we're gonna go through the work to do all of this, let's make it as ironclad as we can. It doesn't mean we're right, it's just saying this is the decision we made and how we're boxing it to the court. I think a week is, for me, a minimum amount of time to really deliberate, because the community wants to make sure we're reading all of their public comments. The applicant wants us to hear all of their evidence. And I think that's the best way of doing that. I also had a question on applications. Amending applications throughout a process with a hearing. And how do we really address that and the concerns that people bring forward on both sides? Because both sides always have concerns over the application comes in, and is that a full, complete application, but then it gets amended over time, which means the arguments of some people come in and they're in full-on opposition of something, but the application will have changed during the times of arguments. And that question has come up of, is the application that we're arguing the one that was submitted to planning from the beginning, after when it hits its first hearing, or all of these amendments and changes that happen that serve on both sides? I've heard the argument, and this did come up as a question to me on the RV of, that application was submitted and it has had some pretty significant changes. But we treated it as, because it was the person and the camp, as one thing. And should we reasonably be saying, this is a completely different thing that you're asking for this time? And I looked at that when because I did my worksheet even though I wasn't at that one. When I looked at that big distinction on affordable housing and removing affordable housing, that is a huge change.
I think because that is still in the administrative appeal process. I know we want to use it as a hypothetical. Let's make sure we don't lead into anything that could be construed at, we could still receive a reconsideration request for that.
Right.
Just so we know where we're at.
Understood. How should we take applications that get changes that are pretty big changes? And should we say, that was a question that I think is reasonable, especially as we're talking about doing a better job on how we render opinions, how we adjudicate some of these applications comes up as a question too, of when is it a completely new thing versus the same thing?
That's probably something that planning staff and I will have to work on to give you guys a thorough answer. I know in the past we've allowed an applicant to subtract something, right, to take away something, because then that, but not to necessarily to add. And I think that's been maybe what we've done in the past, and I can't speak for the stuff behind the scenes that the planning staff works on with applicants. Because I think that if you remove something, you're asking for lesser permission, and therefore you're not prejudicing anybody else by doing that. Other than that they would have already, notice of everything you're still trying to secure. I don't know if there's another angle to that or anything. Well, what best I can say is that we can.
I would just like to review it, because
Yeah.
the public does have, and I actually, so of people that complain about what we're doing, one of the arguments, and I actually think there's validity to this, of when it's the same thing for a long period of time, but people have an interest in being vocal about it regardless of their side, we're kind of basically just dragging it on longer and longer, which then inherently loses some interest, and that is our system creating a system that doesn't give justice to both sides of it purely based on the application. And sometimes changing by reduction is actually a significant change that warrants a different type of review, that instead of assuming, should we just have a position as a board about applications that change and how we're going to process them, because it's a difference on some of them of how much work planning staff might have to put into something that gets changed, and a reduction can result in planning staff having to take a whole new look at a project, but the person isn't paying for that necessarily because we're treating it as the exact same application. So I would just like us to review that while we're looking at how we do this worksheet, so that there's a standard across the county, because it came up a lot of questions on when you and I had the discussion on our deliberation difference of what is a completed application. And I was saying, well, just because you turn it in, because in my mind, I think of if I turn something in for the state and I didn't provide all the information requested, my application is not deemed completed. So I don't start to toll statutes. So what is our position as a county going to be? Are we going to say all of the conditions must be met for us to thoughtfully consider it as an application? Because we do that with people that do bid proposals. We call it a dead proposal if it wasn't, yes, you gave it to us, but it was incomplete, so we're not using it. And I think there should just be some consistency. That came up as a question, and if we're going to look at our process, it removes that feeling of, well, we did it this way for this guy and differently for someone else, and what constitutes a big enough change. So are we okay with the week, and we just want to tell them, look at a minimum of a week, Commissioner Warren?
Okay with what?
A week?
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. We can work with your staff and make that work. Where was I?
3B.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so on the graphic here is total building location permits. So in June, we received 121. That's about a 20% uptick from last June, and still a little bit less than 2020, 2021, 2022, but still a good number for the month. And we're over halfway through the calendar year, and looks like according to this number, we're on track to exceed building location permits from 2024. I'm gonna exit out of the full screen here. That's just not. There we go. So these are planning applications. So this first graphic here is total land divisions. We saw a significant downturn from May, but the May number was likely skewed due to the MLD moratorium. So it looks like this month was more in line with previous months from this year and the previous year. Quasi judicial files, we received 4 last month, which is a decrease from April and May, and a decrease from last year in June. Some of these come from building violations and zoning violations. So a lot of times those variances are included, or conditional use permits or anything like that. But right now, we're still at a good number for the year, 54. Last year was 76. I imagine with these numbers, we'll also have more than we did the previous year. Administrative land use files. So we saw an increase from May to June of 14 files. We currently have 150 files for the year, and it looks like last year we had quite a bit more. So just looking at these numbers, it looks like we'll have less than the 513 we had last year, and probably a little bit more on track with 22 and 23.
Alex, do you have any idea some of the types of administrative? Just that last year was such a huge anomaly.
Yeah. So a lot of it, some of it will be, this will also include short plats and minor land divisions, so we'll probably see a little less due to that. A lot of times, administrative land use files, like a lot line adjustment or boundary line adjustment, will come in due from a building location permit. A lot of times people have two properties next to each other, they want to build right in the middle, but they have to combine the lots in order to do so. I don't know the exact nature of all those files from last year, but those are some of the reasons why it may, and I don't know why June was such an anomaly compared to even the rest of last year. Did I answer your question?
To the best of your ability, yeah.
Okay.
The lack of data, it's okay. Just wondering if you knew why the anomaly, so.
Sure.
Thank you.
So these are the applications by year. So we're right on track with the same amount of subdivisions we typically get. A little bit more with short plats, and about the same number with minor land divisions. The minor land divisions obviously will be 0 from here on until the either the moratorium is lifted or the code is changed. Family exemptions, where we've seen more than we did last year. We've over doubled those applications have over doubled. Same with amendments. We've seen an increase in those. Zone changes, we're right on par, and we're likely to exceed the numbers from 23 and 24. Conditional use permits, it seems like we're right on track with where we were last year. Variances, we're already at 22, and I believe now we're at 25 coming into July, excuse me. So we'll likely exceed variance applications that we received in 24, as well as 23. It looks like the numbers have stayed fairly steady through the past 5 years, and it looks like we will continue on that trend. Similar with modifications, we've received 3 this year. They're not a very common application that we get, so they're likely to stay around the 3 to 6 number there. Vacations, so this is for road or plat vacations. Again, it's not a very common file type that we receive, so likely to stick around that 3 to 6 range. So, and I think this will answer your question a little bit better, Commissioner Domke. So, this year we have 13 boundary line adjustments, where last year we had 54. 18 lot line adjustments, where we had 49 last year. 2 home occupation permits, where we had 5 last year. 4 standalone stormwater permits, where we had 11 last year. And it looks like vacation rental permits is probably the anomaly here. So we received 291 vacation rental permits last year, and this year we've received 71.
That'll explain it. Thank you.
Administrative exceptions, we've had 2 this year, where we had 18 last year. 20 administrative variances this year, where we had 27 last year. 19 flood development permits, where we had 45 last year. And 1 certificate of compliance, where we had 13 last year. Next is our public records requests. So this month we had 47 public records requests. We saw just over 50% increase from May, and it looks like we're probably right around on track to have the same amount of public record requests as we did in 24. So next is our budget. So right now, we're 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. Our total revenue is 812,000, and we're budgeted for 925. It looks like we're just about on track to meet that budget. June is, you can see that there's a almost 50% downturn in revenue from May to June. Likely that is from the moratorium on minor land divisions, as well as the implementation of our new citizen self-service with building location permits, where when in our old system, we would take the building location permits and receive payment that day, where when the citizens are putting their building location permits online, they get a estimation of their fees, and then when a planning technician reviews it, they review the fees to ensure that they're accurate, and then they'll pay the fees. We put this system in June 1st, I believe, and so not all of those building location permits have been processed. So that I believe would be the explanation of the downturn in revenue there. So our prediction is that we'll see that revenue made up in July. And with our expenses, we're at 1.139 million, and our budget is 1.58. It looks like we're going to be right on track, or maybe even come under in that budget year. And I'm not the financial guy in the office, so I'm just reading what I got, and that's kind of just the overview that I
That's
understand.
a don't ask questions part.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Message received.
That looks good, thank you.
So now we're going to get to compliance, and I'll have Katie take over.
Well, I think you're close enough.
Close enough, okay. So we're still at year to date, it's 178 building violations. This time of year, the compliance investigators are busy out doing inspections, so those aerial violations are on the back burner until things slow down. We had 4 new building violations this last month in June, and it looks like we closed 3. And then 2 BLPs were submitted for building violations, so, I mean, it's slower right now, but it will pick up. Zoning violations, same thing, it's just a little bit slower right now, and usually the zoning violations are complaint driven. We have been receiving complaints, but, so there was 9 new zoning violations for June, and it looks like we closed out 2. So a total of 32 this year. Any questions about that?
Thank you, Katie. Looks like I may have skipped over a couple things, but I believe we're also going to be reviewing some of these later, but I'll go through the software real quick. So this is our first full month of being completely digital with the, they call it Civic Access, is our citizen self-service system. So we've gotten really positive feedback already from the public. I think we've figured it's about a 80% positive feedback. So, I mean, good enough, right? It's much better.
Alex. Good enough, because I've fielded some complaints.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't true.
That not everybody is computer literate or technology literate, and they did not seem to have a very good relation with staff when asking planning staff to help with their permits.
Okay.
So whatever we can do to do a better job for the people, because not everybody's,
Sure.
including myself. I'll be the first to admit, paper is where it's at for me, and it is still that way for a lot of people. So whatever we can do to make the planning staff understand that, don't just say, hey, it's online, send them out the door and let them try and figure it out. If they can sit down with a staff member at their desk and have help filling it out, that's what we need to do.
And they are welcome to fill out or enter in our cases or a kiosk in our office. And we're happy to go over and help them. The only, I think the trouble is, the planning techs don't know that backside of it. And there's not really, they haven't been able to get in there and view it the same as a customer can. Or we can't go on the back end and help them through it to see where they're stuck at. And I think that the communication is just not clear when people try, especially if they're calling in and hey, I'm stuck here. It's really hard to understand where that is exactly. But we do have instructions, and I don't know, we will work better on communicating to the public. Coming in is probably the best way for us to help them.
Right.
And walking them through step by step on our kiosk.
Which brings up another point. I don't know if you've had time to address it or not, but Fridays.
We haven't, because we have to make a decision as a board.
Interesting, because people are coming in on Fridays to do this kind of thing, and your office is closed. There's no help for them.
Right.
Yeah, we do have to make a decision about
I
that.
thought we were going to put it on our agenda to get a vote so that we were just.
I sent you guys an email asking
I thought
for
it was
the
just an
administrative
administrative
confirmation. It is.
Well, I saw you in the hallway and I said either way, I just wanted to be publicly addressed at a Tuesday meeting.
Yeah. So I think we all agree it's an administrative decision. I sent the email with the synopsis of all the hours of all the departments and where we have some inconsistency. So if we can come together on what we want that to be. Jake and I have already had a couple of conversations that he's anticipating a board action to have them change, but I haven't communicated a final decision to him because I want to be sure that we are all on the same page as a board with any and all shifts that we're going to make to create the alignment. So, but yeah, Jake's aware that there's going to be a follow-up conversation once the board is in agreement.
I think in part, also some community feel like they don't want to come in to get help for something that's considered self-serve. And so maybe sometimes people might, as the staff are learning the system also, maybe there's an option for a quick reference for an over-the-phone guide. Because if people have to come in to use self-serve, then it makes it a little bit like a burr under the saddle of, it's kind of like self-checkout where the lady wants to manage you when you're checking out, but she won't check you out kind of deal. I think that can create kind of that frustration. And maybe if there was a way that we could do what are the issues that people are typically having, and maybe have a sheet that we can work through to talk somebody through it without them coming in. Because then your feedback will be, well, why am I paying for self-service if it's really, I can't work through without coming into the county building? And I think maybe we need to just educate the community that we're learning how to get it through. We're available if you come in, but we're going to try to work through talking someone through something online. Because that's a different customer service thing, to walk someone through a technical thing when you can't do the easy thing of saying, give me control of your computer. It's not,
Yeah.
that's the downside to what it is. And so that's why it's easier to come in, but people, if it's self-service, why come in?
And just the public try to explain to us, where they're at in the process and what exactly they're hung up on. They're not, I don't know, the communication.
It's the game of, it's a social game where you say, you try to build what I build, and let me explain it to you, and you realize that you're both horrible listeners and givers of instructions, and because that's just how it is over the phone. But maybe if there was a way to identify as people are calling in with complaints or coming in, what are the typical spots that people are getting hung up on? And then doing kind of a staff education of, we've gotten 10 people and this is where they're stuck and this is what they're trying to communicate to us might be helpful from a team side. And then we can do the same when we hear people have issues with it. Might be helpful.
And I can volunteer to be a guinea pig and do some self-service things and see if I
Secret shopper.
see where I get caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Katie said, it's just growing pains. We're all learning it too. We were thankfully able to speed up the transition into it faster than we thought we were being able to. So we're still learning. We're still trying to figure it all out. But yeah, thank you for the feedback. That we'll address that with the team and address that with the right people so we can keep getting better. Updates with Deckard. I will be going over some Deckard stuff here shortly, so I won't go into full detail into it now. But we've moved our vacation rental permit servicing over to Tyler as well. So we're not currently using Deckard as the servicer for the vacation rental permits. But like I said, we'll be going over the contract here shortly, so I'll go a little bit more in depth into that. We have no staffing or organizational changes. We've got an action item to lift a notice of title as well. Do we have a notice of title?
Yes. Not lifting, no, we only have placing.
Oh, okay, that's just out here on the agenda, so I wanted to make sure.
That's why I was asking about
Okay.
executive session.
So next is letter E for pending and proposed ordinance changes. So right now, we have a number of Title 12 changes working through with the Planning Commission right now. So chapters 2 and 3, I believe, are going to be, I believe they've reviewed them, and Jake is going to be putting the applications in for those shortly so we can get them in for a hearing. Same with chapter 6 and chapters, chapters 1 and 2 are ready for hearing. Chapter 6 is ready for hearing, and we are working through chapters 3 and 4 with the Planning Commission right now in a workshop setting. We've only had one workshop with them, and it's quite the bear to tackle. So I think that's going to be a little bit longer process than these other ones that we've had. We got through about 5% in the last meeting. It's just a lot of things to go through, and there's also some things pending the comprehensive plan update and everything like that. So next is the Title 16 APA ordinance change. We brought this to the APA Commission, I believe it was beginning of the month or last month or end of last month, in anticipation of the new statute changes from the Idaho legislature. I don't believe we made some red marks here, just updating it and aligning it with state statute, and the APA Commission had no additional changes. So I'm sure you'll be seeing that soon in a hearing setting. Are there any questions so far on any of the ordinance changes?
No.
Okay.
My one question is regarding the APA. When I reviewed it, I did not have a chance to confirm if this is direct from statute with the statute amendment, but it talks about, let's see. This would be on page 4, under 16-105 D. Talks about if there's a failure for the planning director to make a decision. Shall become the decision of the administrator or other administrative officer if appointed. Just please verify if that language comes out of statute, and it just seems like problematic language to me that we refer to officers that are positions that don't exist in our county. So, because we don't have anyone I know of that's identified as an administrator or an other administrative officer that would be able to render a decision in the absence of the planning director.
So typically, and like if you read Title 12, there's, the planning director has a definition. It's the planning director or the designee. So typically, the designee is another planner or myself. So with these administrative files, so take like a boundary line adjustment, for example, when a planner will review that file, and when that file is ready, we stamp the resultant deed, and underneath it, it'll say planning director or designee, and the planner has the authority to sign off on that boundary line adjustment after review from the planning director. So I believe that's how it says, but we can check the.
Yeah, if you could just
ordinance or
verify
the
this
statute.
language from the statute, because that's different language.
Yeah,
The designee of the planning director is different language than
sure.
it shall become the decision of the administrator. It's making it sound like it moves to a different level that I don't think we have defined anywhere in our code, so I think it's problematic to have that language.
Okay.
Anyway, if you would look at that, please,
Sure.
before it gets brought to the board for final approval.
On that one, I think you have to look at what the intent of that square was, because that word administrator does exist in code. We just don't use that in the county. And it could have been that was copied from looking at what another county does where they do, because you can have a county administrator, and that is, my thought was, are you just writing it as broadly based on what someone else did? So if it's that, the intention is that it's someone that's within the purview of the director of planning, then maybe that's what it gets tailored to. I took it as a generic administrator, and that was more kind of in line of a kind of job description type of a
Sure.
shift that might exist.
If I recall correctly, the APA statute appoints the planning director as the administrator of these. So I think that's where that language comes from, but we also define, the ordinance now defines the planning director, so it does, similar to the way I explained it just now, his or her designee or appointee. So we can add that language in there to make sure that it's cleared up.
Sure. Or just define what the administrator is.
Sure.
Within this section, but one way or another, we need to define.
Clear is good.
Yep, I agree.
Otherwise, when the board receives an appeal on the decision, well, the administrator was supposed to decide.
Never.
Go find the administrator.
So next is, so this is the Deckard amendment to the services agreement. So I believe it was, I don't recall if it was last month or the month before, the board decided that we would only use their property identification system rather than the servicing. So like I said, the vacation rental permit servicing has already been transferred over to EPL. And this amendment here is to only use the property identification. So it'll see that the total subscription fees this year will not exceed $18,900, and future years renewals are subject to an annual increase not to exceed 5%. The Decker Technologies has reviewed these and signed off. We've also included an addendum that is required for Idaho statute for the boycotting Israel, government of China, and abortion provider stipulations, and they've signed off on that as well.
Has legal reviewed this?
Yes.
Is this an action item on the agenda for the board?
It is.
The chairwoman like a motion?
Sure, sorry.
Based on the information before us, I move to approve amendment number 1 to the Master Professional Service Agreement between Bonner County and Decker Technologies, Inc. as presented.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any comment from the public on this item? Is there anybody online?
There is, but nobody has their hands raised.
All right, seeing no public comment, deliberation by the board.
None?
Hearing none, roll call vote. Yes.
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 Bill, do they have to make a motion on the addendum too? Okay. Perfect. Okay, next is also an action item, discussion decision. So this is an interpretation of the Bonner County Personnel Policy 1006, travel policy and reimbursement procedures. So we have a employee who's a remote worker. She lives remote in Missouri, and she was out here for 70 days implementing the civic access system as well as training. And by happenstance, we lost our hearing coordinator, so she was here training the new hearing coordinator as well. So what the policy one that we're looking here is 1006.8, mode and route of transportation. So the policy states that employees shall use the most practical mode of travel from the standpoint of time and expense. When unusual circumstances preclude adhering to this procedure, the appropriate elected official or department head or director may allow an exception. Supporting documentation shall be attached to the travel expense voucher, and county vehicles are to be used wherever possible. She does not have access to a county vehicle, but she did drive from Missouri to here rather than flying and staying in a hotel while she was here. She brought her own personal RV to stay in while she was here. I don't recall off the top of my head what the proposed or what the amount would have equaled to for a hotel stay for 70 days. I don't know what number they used. If I would assume a average hotel room here would be $150 to $200 a day.
I don't want to go specifics onto her because you're trying to
Sure.
change a generic policy.
Oh, I'm not trying to, this is more of an interpretation. This is a disagreement we have with the auditing department over her.
But it's specific to that particular situation versus
Right, and
the
that,
policy itself.
sure.
So I don't want to go into her specifics because that can be a rabbit trail of questions from us on what took place for that particular employee. Because there's a specific example that was used in terms of what took place and how things were authorized and then what that bill was. So are you asking for the board to give an interpretation? Because this policy is being reviewed by HR already. What's the goal of what you're working on?
The goal is an interpretation of the policies, so we can finalize the expense from the employee.
So my understanding on the specific issue with the employee was that the county had to cover the costs because we're talking about what happened in hindsight. And that moving forward, we need to address how it all took place to begin with, but they're two separate things. So has that bill not been covered and she hasn't been reimbursed and that's what the issue is?
That's correct.
Okay, so that is separate than this, because I thought that was already told to auditing, we had to pay it, but we needed to fix how it happened. So,
I agree. I was approached by auditing and by the director on this topic, and I rendered the opinion that we can modify and discuss the policy for this more unique situation for the future. But that in this case, as the director, which the policy says, he made a decision, authorized something, and the employee incurred costs and should be reimbursed. So there's a whole lot about that scenario that is fairly
Yeah.
unique to anything our policy specifically addresses. But I think under the circumstances, we had a director per the policy who made an authorization that should be
So what I'd like
paid to the employee.
to do is not address this part in this meeting, because there's a lot of moving targets, but send an email to the clerk and copy planning and all three commissioners and Bill that they need to pay the reimbursement. Do you have an issue with that? It's not a board decision. I don't understand. This is not a board decision. She incurred that cost. I thought she was already,
But really, if anything, this goes back to the whole flow for types of expenses and things like that. If the auditors think that it's not justly due, it can be included in they can flag it for you guys when it.
on a
comes.
Tuesday
On a
meeting, but not
Tuesday,
just
right,
not
but-
pay it.
But, so, this has always been somewhat of a point of contention, almost, not always, but I think what the law really envisions is that if the auditors have a problem with an expense, they flag it for your review at that point. Like, prospectively deny something is not necessarily what the law tells or authorizes the clerk to do, because they don't get to make the decision themselves. Ultimately, it should be a board decision. But in practice, we have a comptroller, and we let that person have authority to like get ahead of problems. Because that way we're hopefully solving them on the front end and not creating a problem in a business meeting where we're pulling out individual parts of the claim, that kind of thing, right? So I like the way we do it, but in this situation, when there's like a genuine disagreement about whether or not a claim is justly due, then it is better to, I mean, ultimately, whether or not that bill gets paid is your guys' decision. That's the bottom line. And if, so however we manage that, you know what I mean?
Any issue with just emailing them now saying that the board has been informed that the planning staff member who traveled to the
Yeah,
county
please move
was
forward.
not reimbursed?
Yeah,
Please reimburse her for travel. We will address the issue of concern separately, but would like this resolved quickly.
What are those costs?
I don't recall off the top.
It's a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, if I
It's-
believe, if I talked to them this morning, and it was about 1,100 each way.
And that includes the 70 days of stay?
It's just mileage reimbursement.
So they're requesting mileage reimbursement in lieu of, say, airfare and hotel.
Okay.
It's a great deal for the county.
But there was more to it. Instead of going into that issue, everybody's okay with me saying, can we just process this payment?
Well, I wanted to know what the payment was for before I gave an
Yeah.
okay on it. I mean, it's
He
not
said-
$76,000.
He said 1,100
Good
each
point.
way, so
Yeah.
I'm re-asking the question I asked.
Yeah. Yes.
So your answer is yes?
My answer is
Because if
yes.
it was 22,000 versus 2,200, it would be a lot more of a discussion.
Yeah, yeah, because Alex was going down the rabbit hole of $150 to $200 a day, so was she asking for 125 a day for living? I did not know.
Right.
Yeah, that's
No,
not a problem.
only mileage reimbursement.
$70 days. She was here for 70 days.
She was. I think she came at the end of April and left last week.
It was really cool to see you.
Yeah.
Because she used to be here full-time before she moved.
Okay. Okay, we've resolved that part.
Now we have the appeal.
Yes, this is it's a refund request rather than an appeal.
Sorry, refund.
So this is from a minor land division. The planning staff rendered a decision on this file and denied the file. The denial is not what is being asked to be decided on. It's whether or not the refund request would be for this minor land division.
And this is the case where we did all of the work and the decision was based on the information that was received and they just don't want to pay the fee?
So they've paid the fee for the application. Okay, so their request is to either take the fee that was paid for the minor land division and refund it to them, or credit it towards their short plat. This was, it was denied on the basis of one piece of part of the minor land division code that doesn't allow for a split zone property to be created, and that was what would be happened here. The applicant stated that that staff gave them an assurance that there was no issues at a pre-application meeting. I was in that pre-application meeting, and we don't, as a practice, give pre-approvals because we don't give pre-approvals because things can change. What is given to us in a pre-application meeting may be different than what is actually provided in an application. I believe that the applicant took this as, we have no issues, so it should be, there should be no problem, but it's a very preliminary review when we're doing pre-application meetings. It's more of, you need this, this, and this, and once we get the application and it's paid for, then there's an actual deep analysis into the application itself. So this applicant is applying or has already applied for a short plat to create this property. Currently, the short plat code doesn't have that contingency of split zone properties. So I believe that that's they're looking for that as their path forward. But the work has been done, the decision has been rendered, and currently there is outstanding fees for the county surveyor review fee.
For me, this is the part of the development process, and we did the work as the county. And so that, just because it's not the decision that someone wants, doesn't mean that we didn't. That's part of what planning is. It's user-based fee, and they use the service of a review of a minor land division that was subsequently denied. So my position is not that that service gets refunded. I didn't see, sometimes I may have missed it, but I didn't see a note. Usually Jake puts a note that says his position on a request like that, but that's my view on that, is we did the work, and that's what they.
What did they pay?
So they've paid their application fee.
$695.
That was $695. And they have an outstanding fee of $308.14 for the county surveyor review.
So to clarify, they're alleging that staff in multiple meetings told them that so long as they stayed above 10 acres, that there would not be a problem with either what they call MLS, I'm assuming they mean MLD, or the short plat. So it is, since you said, Alex, that you were in attendance at one or more of those meetings, you're indicating that no assurances were given?
No assurances.
Okay. Based on that information, then I agree that we should uphold the director's decision to not issue a refund.
How much time, I'm concerned, I do have a concern about this process. How much time did the planning department put into this before it was realized that they had to go with a short plat instead of MLD?
We do a review once the application is paid for, and it's typically one of the first things that we review is zoning. So in this case, they have a property that's zoned rural 10 and ag forest 10, and just one of the properties encompassed that split zoning. From what I recall in the pre-application meeting, the lot that they were creating wasn't going to encompass that zoning. But once we received it, then we noticed that. It's not typically practice for the planning department to point it out and say, hey, do you want to change your application now? Do you want to change your lots to conform to this code? We take what we get when we deem an application complete, and we review it that way.
So what I'm proposing, I guess, is a compromise. If the planning department could tell us, that they've got 5 hours in on this project, that we need to charge them for that 5 hours. But then I think we should credit them for the balance towards what they have to go into the fee of the short plan.
I'm not in agreement to do that, because we don't do a charge by the hour. It's by the application. And in part of what the public gets to do is you can take the route of, and it is a lesser expensive option to go to planning department, or you hire someone to do that work for you. But the question isn't the outcome of the application, it's that the work was done for the application. And so they applied for something, and the onus is on the applicant of that project to do their research on what they're asking for. But to say it was incumbent on planning to say, I knew what I wanted and I applied for it, but by the time I got in my application, it was identified that it wasn't a viable option for what I fully wanted to do. If we were to start saying the people don't have to pay for that work that happens in planning, that would be, in my opinion, a very bad road to go down, because the planner is working with the person who's coming with their plan of what they want. And in this case, I understand saying, I'm going to try, and I probably would also try, can I throw some of that MLD money onto what I'm actually going to do? But it doesn't change that the hours that the planning department put into that MLD review were spent money. And to tell the person who required that work that they don't pay, what you're actually saying is that the rest of us will absorb having submitted that application. That's really, because it doesn't change that they did already the work on it. And that's...
One other point that this speaks to is, you could tell me if I'm wrong, planning staff doesn't actually keep track of hours.
That was my
spent
first
on
comment.
it.
It's not by hour.
Yeah, like in a law firm, you do, right? Everything gets tracked by the 10th of an hour, and it'd be really easy to do what you're proposing. That would make a lot of sense. But since we do our fee schedule based on files, on applications, and not on, like, the law says that the fee that we charge for each application needs to be no greater than, it has to match basically the amount of time we take. So when we adopt the fee for each application, there's an implicit acknowledgement there that the cost for that service is reflected in the amount that we charge. So if we were to begin trying to go back and at a very granular level and say, well, on this file, did you actually do the number of hours multiplied by the person doing the work to equate the fee in the fee schedule? If we start to do that, I'm afraid I don't want to broadcast that that's something that we're willing to do, or at least I would concede that planning staff would be very burdened by that. Because we could have a situation where people begin to question the fee for other sorts of things. And it's possible that two applications that have the same fee cost could have a different amount of staff time for each one of them, depending on the type, the work done on that file. But that doesn't mean that one of them should pay less. That, if we do that, it just creates an administrative problem that I'm not sure we're able to.
We run into that when people do public records requests, and we have the maximum that we'll do where we don't start charging, and then people want to say, well, we had this, especially when it comes to the sheriff's office, when people want to look at tape. Well, how do you justify the hours and start calculating? That's not what our fee schedule is based on. It's just the application itself. I think, and that's why some people choose to use an outside planner to work on their project, and then they come with that information to the planning department when they do their application. I don't think it's to spread that cost of development and planning onto all of Bonner County, because that's what I feel like I would be doing if I said refund what the county had to pay based on the fact that they're staff members.
And I guess I have a different angle of looking at things. I don't know how many hours the planning department spent on this, this application. If it was 1 or 2 hours, then I think it's unfair to the applicant because now that applicant is paying for everybody else's services. Whereas you're looking at it from a different angle that the people are having to pick up this person's tab in this situation. The fee is based upon roughly the amount of time it takes the planning staff to process this. We're not supposed to be making money on our fees, it's supposed to be paying for it. So it seems to be hard to justify, and that's why I was trying to figure out how much time planning had on this. If it was literally 1 or 2 hours, would it be fair to say, well, we can go ahead and transfer that amount, that fee paid over to a short plat fee? Because now that person's unjustly paying for something that they didn't get.
And I understand the intent, but because we don't track things that way, I don't think there's any good and reasonable way to say we know what the cost was for a particular application versus another one. And then I feel like we are going to hit a slippery slope where everyone's going to start questioning, how much did mine really cost? And I want,
Well, I'm not too concerned about that. My concern is how much time did planning staff spend on this application, Alex, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. Each of these are pretty different. I know from my experience, it's taken me anywhere from 2 to 12 hours.
To process an application.
Correct. Yeah.
How
and
much time was spent on this? I'm trying to
I'm
figure
not
out in
sure.
my head, at what point in time did the planning staff say, whoa, this isn't gonna work?
But I think the difference is you're
Was it an hour in?
asking,
Or was it 10 hours in? Because if it's an hour in,
and I get that, it's just they're not tracking at that level, which is why it's hard to answer the question and know if it's accurate, because they deal with averages, right? Average costs to do things.
Right.
And that's what our fee schedule gets built on. So because they're working with averages and they don't track per file hours, the only thing we can get back is a guess. It's not going to be accurate data. So
I guess let me ask it in a different way then. At what point in the process of this whole application does the planning staff realize or say, this won't work this way?
what I think they're telling you is that they don't know the time because they're not tracking the time. They just know application received, we worked on the application, and this is the range. And I think that you're wanting to say, if you turned it in and when you saw it, you knew, oh, this is not going to work, would they have to actually pay for that application? And in this case, what they're saying is, an application was received, we didn't track the time, we worked on it and found that an MLD was going to be denied, and the person doesn't want to pay for the MLD. And you're wanting to say, how much of the $695 per that was paid, if you divide it amongst the amount of time? And the answer is, we don't do that. We only do the application as a whole. And so you would be saying that you want a different pay structure for applications received, which is what, if that's what you want, it's fine. It's just that Alex cannot give that to you because that is not how the pay structure is set up for applications and planning.
That's not what I was saying. I was simply
I
trying to
understand what your
state,
question is.
at what point in time did you get the completed application and your planning staff sits down, looks at it, and 30 minutes in realizes there's a problem and it's non-conforming?
But when you say, when you say, at what point in time did you understand that the application was not a good application for an MLD? You are asking them to have calculated the work on the application itself to be able to answer your question. And that is what he's saying is, well, I don't know. We just know that we received the application and the application was denied. They're not clocking the time spent from receipt, because one could argue, at what point does the time start? When they first read through the application? How long did it take whoever to read through it? They're not calculating that. And so because you're trying to figure out how much money could you potentially credit to the new application that they're putting forward.
I'm even thinking about crediting the whole thing if it literally took a half hour for the planning department to say this this isn't gonna work this way, you need to do a short plat.
Even if it just took half an hour, that fee is based on, so I'll just ask this question. If the fee is not based on the time, the fee is based on, as Commissioner Domke explained, the average for this type of application, how do you justify changing any of the fee when it was built on the average of that type of application?
I'm not proposing changing the fee or the structure or anything else. I'm simply wanting to address this person's request, which is to refund his money in full or to credit it to the short plat. And my question simply is, I'm surprised planning staff doesn't have an answer for this. Roughly how far into the process was it that planning staff realized that this was a non-conforming thing or wasn't going to work?
But you are asking to change the fee because you're saying to this person that they're not going to be held to the same standard as everybody else who applies for that type of application if a refund is given based on a rubric that is not used for how people are charged. And that's what there's not an answer. And so maybe the answer is, how much do you want a motion that you credit for their other application, and see if you have board support for that motion? Because their answer is they're not timing how much they're touching the application to say 30 minutes into the MLD application on this file, we realized they needed to file a different form. They can't tell you the answer because they don't calculate that. So how much would you like to, given what you know about the dollar amount of this application, how much do you feel you would like to see if someone would credit for the other application? Maybe that's a better way, because they don't have the answer.
You don't have the answer? Because I was literally asking the planning staff for an answer, and you kept trying to answer for me.
No, he actually did. I think that you're not understanding. He has answered your question that they don't calculate it, and then Bill Wilson stepped in and explained they don't calculate the time. And so,
I understand all of that. I really do.
okay.
And I know that you're not sitting there with a stopwatch hitting it. What I simply asked was, at what point in time did you realize, and I'm not looking for specific, was it literally when it hit the person's desk after reviewing it for 30 minutes, or do you have 3 or 4 or 5 plus hours? That's what I was just kind of looking for.
I don't have the answer for that, Commissioner. I wasn't the planner that was assigned to this. I received this application for review when a decision was ready to be made, and I reviewed the file then. But I couldn't tell you how long the planner worked on it before he realized that issue.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, would you like to make a motion on this particular item?
No, I'm not. Thanks.
Commissioner Domke, would you like to make a motion on this item?
Based on the information before us, I move to uphold the planning director's decision to deny the request for a refund of the application fee for the subject file.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public on this item?
Nobody has their hand raised.
All right, deliberation by the board. Hearing none, roll call vote. Yes,
No.
Yes.
motion passes.
And I think that is it for the open session, but we do have three items in executive session.
Are they all under litigation?
Yes,
Yes.
they are.
All right, at this time, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make the motion that we go into executive session as per Idaho Code 74-206 1F litigation.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public? Seeing none, deliberation by the board. Hearing none, roll call vote. Yes.
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 All right, guys.
Have we disconnected from the folks online?
Did you know we don't carry insurance for any canine dogs over at the sheriff's office? Yeah. All done? All right, it is 12:53. We're coming out of executive session with no decisions made. This meeting is adjourned.